We're going to go into section 2, and introducing this is my old friend Richard Firth-Godbehere.
Hello. Well, many of you out there will have seen the show Breaking Bad. And if you have seen the show Breaking Bad, you will be aware that all of the methamphetamine in the entire universe comes from a small area where the South of America borders onto Central America. And a guy called Heisenberg, because America's medical system is a bit of a mess, has to sell it in order to not die to death, which is not what you want. Well, it turns out that's not true. Not true at all. Actually, most of the methamphetamine that gets out in the world is made in somewhere called the Golden Triangle. And the Golden Triangle is in South Asia. It's actually on the borders of Myanmar, Thailand, and Laos, Asian Pacific region. And that's where a lot of it comes from. In fact, the business is so rife that some people say they're too powerful to fall. 172 tons were seized in East and Southeast Asia 2021 of drugs, and 1 billion, that's with a B, meth tablets were seized. It's worth 61.4 billion annually, and it has become so rife that just recently a small, tiny, teeny little monastery in Phetchabun, a province in the Bunsang Phan province in Thailand, they tested the monks and discovered that every single one of them was on meth. And so they defrocked the lot of them, and now the locals are panicking because they've no one to go and hear them when they need to talk to the Buddha or give them food, which helps them along. So I find it very interesting because there's two issues here. One is the old religious hypocrisy. I'm sure they were telling the people that they shouldn't take drugs and they should be pure and they should lead a good Buddhist life and they should get rid of their clinging to the natural world. And the other one is a message of, are we doing drugs right? I'll rephrase that. Is the way that we are trying to fight drugs the right thing to do? So I'm going to throw this over to Emma. What do you think?
Well, I mean, the question, are we doing drugs right? I'm going to say no. We could be doing it much better.
You're doing them left if you're not careful.
First of all, I love this story. I don't know why it's a crime story, but it's something about the concept of monks buying drugs does kind of tickle me. Like, where do the deals do the deals happen in the monastery? Like, who's conducting them? Are they snuck in like baskets of food donations that people give to the monastery? Do they get like the new young monks to do the deals, or is it like somebody else's responsibility who's more sort of wise? It tickles me. But funny as it is to see monks getting busted for meth, and I do find it funny. It does speak of a bigger and sort of non-religious issue, which is Thailand in particular faces in drug trafficking. I feel like I'm the boring naysayer of the night. I'll try and perk up by the next one. I'm a real downer at the moment on the drugs and everything. The trafficking itself is real dangerous. It attracts a lot of vulnerable recruits. Meth is super addictive. It's well bad, and they have huge amounts of meth floating around Thailand, and it's just not ideal. My kind of thought is if the monks are after incorporating drug usage into religious rituals, then I think go for it, see if we can make that a thing. I don't know, Thailand's not going to say yes, but that's okay for me. Do what you want with your own body, believe what you want, but while it's illegal, it remains a very high risk activity, not just in terms of getting done by the fuzz, but in terms of quality and dosage being unmonitored. It's just going to be a bad time. And I think basically, like Rich started hinting at, it's an example of the fact that a hyper-aggressive war on drugs has a lot of negative side effects and very limited positive results, because they have extremely strict drug laws and a very high drug problem. And I think Phoebe is practically vibrating with the need to speak on this issue, so I shall throw it to you.
Because I say, you talk about laws and other such things, but they're not a deterrent here. I mean, Thailand, if you're caught importing drugs, they will execute you by firing squad. That is their method. That is their chosen method of execution. But this goes to a much wider issue here, and that is institutional legitimacy here of this monastery as a pillar of its community. Because how can that now be trusted as a pillar of its community? Where's its legitimacy? What kind of institutional get up and go does it have? And as we do in Britain, if we all go silent for a second, there is the institutional legitimacy of British institutions just flowing away because they all get very worried about that. And it is quite clearly happening here because they had to sack a lot of them. So now what do? Do you then replace them? Or do you just disestablish this monastery in its entirety and then say we'll start again somewhere else and you don't have a monastery? So you have to go to the base level fundamentals here. Is this in line with monastic teaching? Clearly not. B, what is the punishment for this? Well, Thai law is very strict. So monastic law has said, get out. And now you're left with just a building and some quite unfortunate animals that are just left going, well, what are we doing here? And it's almost as if the monks have got to the point of a lot of religions in the West, such as Christian religions, where they have thought that they're outside the rules and out above the law. Because we've had child sex abuse scandals, we've had fraud scandals, and we've had all kinds of things out the world. Just look at televangelists in America. And it just strikes me that these individuals are part of a much wider institutional rot where people think they can just take the fucking piss and get away with it. And that's where we need to start drawing the line here. What is and is not acceptable in these institutions? And where do we go from here? I mean, Mr. Gilliver, what would you do?
Well, I think I can answer a couple of your questions. That's what I can do. I think I know a little bit about Thai Buddhism, by the way. I know a little bit about Buddhism in general, but I've spent a lot of time around Thai monks and Thai monasteries. So the reverence given to Buddhist monks in Thailand is something that we are unaccustomed to, and I think would find alien. You've mentioned a couple of scandals there, Phoebe, and I think in certain areas of Thai Buddhism they are rife. So I want to talk a little bit about Thai Buddhism itself and the underlying factors which may not be present in a lot of these stories. Certainly, I've read a lot of articles on this story, and I've not seen anything that talk about the underlying factors. So that's what I'm going to do here for a little bit. Monks in Thailand get free public travel, seating priority on transport, for example. So here we're in our country, where you might get elderly and disabled people having priority seating. Those people will move so monks can sit down on public transport. They are expected to move so a monk can sit down on public transport. There are no such thing as Thai Buddhist nuns. They don't exist. The closest there is to Thailand is what's called Mai Jis, and they are lay women who are in a twilight world between society and the religious life. They don't receive any financial support that the monastic community receives at all. They do it purely for the love of the thing, for their religion, and they're just the nobody. They're less than nobody. They're not even considered part of society. And another thing to consider is that some boys going into ordination are thrown lavish parties that are huge social events. And occasionally, if a family cannot afford to throw these parties, this happens mostly in the north of the country, the boys' sisters are, the phrase is sent to Bangkok, which means they're sold or loaned to pay off the debt of their brother's ordination celebration. And this includes being sold into sex work. I've visited many Thai-based Buddhist monasteries in Britain, and the reverence given by the Thai lay community, especially the women, to the monastic community is huge. This isn't just done by the poorer sections of society. On one visit, I met a senior monk who had been gifted his robes by the King of Thailand. These monks have real reverence. And where the story tells us that the monks may have been expelled from the monastery, I would be very, very surprised if serious charges were brought against them. I think it's more like what happens in the Catholic Church abuse scandals, where the abusers are quietly moved on somewhere else. That was a suggestion that Phoebe made earlier, and I think that is probably what will happen in this case. The Vinaya, which is the Buddhist monastic code, which has 227 rules for monks and 311 for nuns, contains 4 parajika, and that's a Pali word that means roughly that which generates loss. In other words, you can be disrobed for these offences. These are having sexual intercourse, stealing, committing murder, claiming attainment of mental concentration that has not been achieved. And clearly getting whacked off your tits on meth is not included in these 4 offences. So I'd suggest, like I said, the Catholic priests who commit sexual offences, they'll just be shuffled somewhere else without significant punishment. Richard?
Yeah, you notice in these reports slid in there is they've been sent to rehab, and I think that's rehab means another monastery, to sit and meditate hard until they realize they need more meth because it's very addictive and you can't just stop it like that.
They're very bored.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. Thai Buddhism is very interesting because we live in a world where we know about Christianity. We know these forms of Christianity that seem to have wandered a long way from the source, but like Jesus, if you read the Bible, probably wouldn't have owned a Rolls Royce and a private jet if it was around today. So they move on. But it's not just Christianity. This kind of Buddhism is so far away from what Siddhartha Gautama originally said Buddhism was. The Buddha himself would have been like, what are you doing? What's this gold about? What are these fine robes about? You miss the point. It's about having everything in moderation and trying to balance everything calmly and meditating and reaching nirvana. It's not getting whacked off your tits. That's certainly not what it's about. Zen Buddhists, they might have gone down with it because Zen did quite a little bit of LSD at one point in history, but they thought it helped attain nirvana, and it probably did. But yeah, it is so far away from the source. It fascinates me that they are so revered and so well liked, and that by the sounds of it, and again, it's only kind of mentioned in these reports, but the village seems to have freaked out. Like, what are we going to do? Who's going to take our offerings now? How are we going to achieve anything like nirvana? How are we going to come close? How are our sons ever going to become monks because we've given you the right amount of offerings so that they have become Buddha-like and can be robed? It is fascinating to me. I've got a soft spot for Buddhism. I sometimes describe myself as a secular Buddhist, but this isn't anything I recognize. Although I do look pretty good in an orange robe, I have to say.
I think the thing is, and I appreciate what you've just said there about Thai Buddhism in general, and certainly in the inner cities, that's the case. I do think there are certain traditions in Thailand which are very, very close to the original source material, and Thai Buddhism in general does follow the Theravada, which is the oldest form of Buddhism we have, and certainly a lot of Thai traditions which don't go around getting whacked off the tits do follow very closely what is contained in the Tipitaka, which is the canon of Buddhism. So I think it's one of those weird countries where you kind of get places which are really close to the source material, and then you go to the kind of inner city areas and everybody's just like living as though they're partying with the tourists. And it's just, there is some real institutional problems in Thailand regards to Buddhism, and I think that a lot of that is due to the reverence that is given. They are given so much reverence. I mean, as I said earlier, we would find it completely alien in this country if we gave the reverence to kind of vicars the Thais give to the Buddhist monks. We would live in a completely different world. Phoebe?
I think there's enough cucumber sandwiches in the world to give that much reverence to a vicar.
It's the tea again.
Here's the question: do you cut the crusts off for them or not? But what this does raise is a much wider point, and that is, well, why is reverence given to them in the first place? Why have these institutions in Britain with the Church of England, in Nepal as it was with Hinduism, and in Thailand with Buddhism? I say Nepal was because they had a revolution which eliminated Hinduism as the state religion. But it is very intriguing how these positions of establishment authority come pretty much with no real grounding to them. Like a bad fiat currency out of Zimbabwe that's just hyperinflating itself out of existence. Are these institutions in danger of becoming so far removed from the source material, as Mr. Godbehere actually stated, that they're actually in danger of just becoming, well, people almost the bad meme of the Chinese restaurant on the river where you look behind you and you see that it's absolute bullshit? Is that what we're in danger of doing here? Are we in danger of wrapping our heads so far around the corner of these things and seeing that there's actually nothing behind them anymore, and they've actually just become these institutions which are self-sustaining themselves? And this is where we are getting to the point at. They keep on saying we're doing the good preaching work, etc., but it does seem to be very self-serving in a lot of cases. And I think this is just another example from another part of the world of people taking liberties with other people's beliefs and other people's generosity and going, it's the easy life for me. I don't need to do anything. Pretty sure Emma wants an easy life like that, but she's chosen something else, haven't you?
It's my retirement plan. No, but I would even say, I guess it's a matter of sort of opinion and perspective. I'd even say we're not close to that point. We have flown past it in many places and situations. There are just institutions that exist for the purpose of perpetuating themselves so that they can benefit from existing, you know. And it's almost, you could almost lead into a discussion about, you know, the sort of the spiritual side of the idea of celebrity, you know, and from whatever religion to the other, whether it's about a god or a pantheon, or it's about, you know, oneness and all things being equal. In none of these cases does it make any sense to give reverence to certain human beings and to say that they deserve more than anyone else and that they should get away with more than anyone else, because we're all supposed to be equal. That's sort of the fundamental thing in all of these religions. So I think it's hard to do because these things happen slowly. Like it's weird for us to look at Thailand and go like, give them a seat on the bus. That's really weird. But those things happen so gradually that it becomes completely normal. So it's hard to do, but it's important to look at those things and say, okay, does this actually serve some sort of spiritual purpose, or are we just giving to people who might not deserve it?
Yeah, I think in Buddhism in general, the kind of there's a symbiotic relationship between the lay community and the monastic community, and it's always been that way. And I'm very careful when I talk about Buddhism because there are Buddhisms. I think it's probably the most diverse religion I can think of, and that is kind of one thought of as one thing. And you know, one of the major contentions I have, especially with kind of Westerners who haven't really studied Buddhism, is that they have this idea that it's completely devoid of any supernatural elements. And there are so many facets to Buddhism that, you know, you get, you know, it's completely secular which tend to be Western aspects of it, where they just sit down and, you know, have a nice meditate for half an hour a day, and, you know, and they think that's pretty much the be all and end all of it. And then you get places like Thailand where, you know, virtually everybody believes that, you know, storms are caused by heavenly beings called devas, And you know, if ever, like, as I said, I've been to many Thai monasteries, and I've literally been at Thai monasteries where storms have been going off, and the kind of lay community have been stood around looking up above trees, because that's where they believe the devas congregate to start these storms, and they're trying to spot these devas. This actually happens. It's you know, Buddhism is a very wide-ranging, faceted religion, which is fascinating to study. Phoebe.
It does remind me. I saw one of those around the world BBC fly on the wall Michael Palin things, and he met the Dalai Lama, and he showed you this thing of all these Western tourists going, "Oh yes, how lovely, how wonderful," etc. It was like, "Oh okay, I just met another bloke." But when the locals were there, it's like, oh. There was so much reverence for the man compared to the tourists who had been there, that it was a demonstration of exactly what you're saying. And to have that level of reverence, I couldn't imagine, say, the Archbishop of Canterbury getting that kind of reverence from anybody.
If people believe the Archbishop of Canterbury was a reincarnated Jesus, he might.
Might do. What number Dalai Lama? Is it the 9th or 10th?
14th.
14th. And there's some argument over the Panchen Lama, because China is saying this is the Panchen Lama.
That's a whole different conversation, which we don't have time for. We will bring it back. I'm very excited to have talked about Buddhism on this episode, because we don't get to do that very often.
Yeah, but what it does show is that there is dispute within Buddhism itself. And when I went to Thailand, I went into one of these, clearly a tourist trap monastery things. And being a friend, we were quite respectful. But another one of our friends there, we had to say to her, "Look, slow yourself down. You will get in trouble. Calm down, stop. They ask you to take your shoes off, etc., etc." And it was very noticeable that these institutions do carry so much weight. And that's just where I want to kind of end it here for me, is that the amount of weight that is actually put into these institutions, and you just go, well, what is the actual mass of these things? And it's just a bit, paper.
Yeah, I think that is a question that we can leave open, and we'll end that one there. It's a very interesting story, and I think, as I said, there are so many facets to Buddhism. We could have a story every week about it and be completely different.